day, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I'm alone. I talk with no one. I visit you a little bit. I talk to my wife on occasion, and then one or two friends on occasion. But I have absolutely nothing to attend to. There's no job that requires my attention whatsoever in any way. There's no planning that goes on. And it's extremely free. There's only the moment. And changing clothing, because one minute I'm hot, the next minute I'm cold from the weather, because I'm not used to the weather changes.
Yes, it's been a bit erratic.
Erratic.
And not untypical of the English weather like that, I wondered a little bit about you, because I thought it must be very good, unusual experience for you to be alone, and that you would make the best use of it.
Yes.
Because in a way, when you're in a place that is new to you, it's possible to be almost inwardly like a monk in the middle of a city.
Exactly. Invisible.
Yeah. In a sense, what occurs for you is that you gradually lose not just the interest, it looks, but the mechanism through which certain attachments can be sustained or something. I don't know what something happens, and it that somehow gets lost.
Yes.
I have not found anything wrong with it at all.
No.
The attention shrinks down, very small, and sort of dwells in a very small space. And yet somehow the shrinking attention into this small space is at the same time universal.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So there's a seeing which is a kind of itemized qualitative seeing that belongs really to the modification of the body-mind experience when we're living in that focus within inside that realm. But in real self-awareness, this shrinking that I mentioned before, that shrinking out of that, the interest in that domain happens, and somehow the consciousness only is sort of marinating in itself. It is like this. It is not something that often we speak too openly about, because it's easily misunderstood and can be misinterpreted to be sort of like self-centeredness and selfishness in a negative sense.
Sure.
But really it is not that. It is really just because before, as soon as consciousness opens up and the attention rushes out into the let's say outer world, so to speak, the world of names and forms and so on. It's as though the consciousness does not have a kind of a conscious self-absorbing time to itself. The mechanism of the functioning of the attention and senses is always kind of like going out, connecting with objects of its fascination and whatever it is, and there's a continuous kind of engagement. Myself, I was asking some friends, please observe and tell me, as soon as the waking state occurs, does one find that we are propelled into business through the attention? Is it always that as soon as the consciousness is available in the waking state, transacting, interacting, pursuing is an inevitable movement, or is it other than this?
Yes.
Is it that we're constantly at work, working away in the conscious time, in the time of consciousness? Are we constantly assessing life, moving on from one concept to another, one intention to another? Is there any rest?
Mm-hmm.
What is the experience of people?
Yes.
Because what has been discovered here is what really is does not undergo any strain or stress.
Mm-hmm. At all.
And it is not a part of that world.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yet the manifest world, the functioning of time, space, relationship, names and forms and all of this clearly has no other place to have come from except this.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yet so absolutely immaculate and clear it is that this is. And there is no one being this. And this is the next point. There's nobody
Mm-hmm.
who has achieved this and is being
Right,
this.
right.
There's no one good enough to be this.
No.
And this is the mistake of the mind. Just it is recognized that this is really what is and what we truly are. And the dynamic functioning of life, time, space, is what we appear to be. And I don't want to dismiss this appearance also, because in some way the appearance, once understanding comes, the light of understanding comes to the mind, then the field of existence, of life, of the physical world, all of this, the whole theater of the consciousness, is in a way to verify how deep the understanding has happened. The fruit has got to not only look good but taste good.
Mm.
Meaning that it cannot just merely be a mental or intellectual comprehension, but that somehow the sense of separate identity, ego, whatever, gets swallowed up and merges into that seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, this is when the fruit tastes good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it like that,
Yes,
as a sense, no? And then the seeing is clear. Only then is the seeing clear and complete. That all this that appears to be is also what is.
Mm.
This that is changeful
Mm-hmm.
also is the expression of that which is unchanging.
Yes.
Yeah.
You had used the phrase a couple times. You had mentioned that I've related to, that's been related to. You said at one point you kind of walked away from your life.
Yes, I walked out of my life.
Yes, and this, my life has fallen away. I
In a sense, what happened is that I don't know what my life was anymore.
Exactly, yes.
And what seems to happen, without trying to claim any kind of victory in any way, is that something here keeps outgrowing itself in terms of any sort of apparent limitations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course there are limitations within the bodily
Sure,
experience.
yeah,
The
sure,
body
sure.
is limited, of course, no.
Sure.
But in terms of the sense of being hemmed in by thought, and what would constitute or create or support the sense of being bound or hemmed in by thought, it is somehow just cannot stand. It cannot stand somehow, you see. I don't see the basis for it standing. There is only this. There's only this that it has not been found another option or possibility of what this can be, but what it is right now.
Okay.
And everything else is coming out of consciousness. Everything else is coming out of that liquid consciousness, which all that is relative, all that is perceivable. And even the sense of one who is perceiving it, all of this, all of this is just the play of the consciousness. And it was right when Sri Bhagwan say that the experiencer and what is being experienced and the functioning of experiencing, they are all the same, one play of consciousness. And somehow that insight, that knowledge was very helpful for becoming very clear that any aspect of the manifest world as it occurs to the consciousness that I am, all of them are held inside the realm of consciousness. And without the consciousness arising, there's no world, there's no duality, there's no division, separation, perception, there's no time, relation. So all of this, I cannot see it as just merely an accident. I don't see it as an accident.
Sure.
Don't see it like this is a fault in the universe. It is definitely, for my way of seeing, a mechanism that is a device of the Supreme in order to taste the experiencing, somehow. Otherwise it's not possible. So it is the same absolute principle, the Supreme Being, that manifests as a feeling of existence, as the feeling I exist, I am in the body. It is the same thing. The I am, I would say, is the earliest arising from that space. The earliest announcing of anything was that feeling I am, which is synonymous with consciousness. They are together going.
Yes.
And to be clear that I am is not, has never been, nor will it ever be a person.
Right.
It is just a consciousness. And it is very important for people to really contemplate these things, because the I has been given over to the person, to the personality, and in almost all cases we're referring to I as the body, as body and mind. So it takes contemplating, to sit with that and let it marinate completely, let the being join the understanding together to become one somehow.
Marinating is a good word, eh? Marinating.
Yes, I feel somehow. This word came to me. I used to watch, sometimes on television I see the people cooking and they talk with marinating, and I says, okay, now I see what they're talking about. Something has to, rest in the juice. But this marinating that I speak about is that which is resting inside its own juice, not another juice.
Yes.
It has to marinate in itself like that, see? There is a point where one is not really trading with the world, really. I don't know if I can express it better than this, but the interest to transact or to create for any kind of personal benefit or something like this. The whole sense of being is caught up in only perpetuating and spreading the understanding. It's like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems that the planning and the projections come out of some misperceived sense of insufficiency or incompleteness.
Also out of restlessness. Sometimes actually activity is just arising out of restlessness. The inability to be in quietude. But then I would want to question, you see, that really deeper inquiry, deeper contemplation needs to happen. Because this agitation, this restlessness, it can only really persist if the sense of being a person is there, you see. Otherwise, it has no support. Even the one who would perceive and name something restlessness, that one wouldn't arise if there's no sense of a person doing it.
Mooji, there's no restlessness here. Peacefulness supreme.
Momentarily, any movement can occur.
Sure.
But they cannot become residential, you see. Yeah, any movement.
I like the way you always say that.
Yeah, any movement can occur, can happen, no? And we must be completely at ease about that. And just like in nature, every movement is going to take place. Who keeps the record of them? You see. So here also, any movement may occur. If there isn't really a identity with them, if there isn't really the sense that there's something happening to me and it's stopping me from being what, and then it doesn't leave any footprint in the consciousness. It doesn't register itself. I've tried to point this out before, that when consciousness is present, the senses come into play, they're active. But is the very fact that they are merely active or operative mean that they are registering impressions, you see? Because when waking up happens, eyes open, hearing is present, smelling, all the functions are there. Does it mean that there is a trader behind them, you see? And this is important, because like this one can move in life, move about in the world. If you point the attention in any direction, then somehow it's as though something gets highlighted for a moment, that you can look at it with more focus. But even that doesn't necessarily imply or compel registration and identification. You can look very intimately at some object or thought without it leaving any smell on you. So what must be absent for that to happen? What must be absent for perception of the manifest world and of thought, feeling, time, and so on? What must happen that perception of that world can take place without embedding any memory, any seed inside the consciousness? It must be an absence of identification.
You always use that term, unassociated beingness.
Yes.
Which is unassociated, not engaged.
And I say this because it seems as though there is a misunderstanding in the minds of some people that what I'm speaking about means almost like a non-perceiving. But perception is taking place. It's completely cool. The seeing, the perceiving is completely cool. Everything can be looked at. You're not wearing blinkers or nothing.
Right.
So everything can be and responded to. Conversations can happen. The meeting of friends, everything.
Yes.
But there is something deeper down that is not happening, and that non-happening is the non-happening of identifying as I am this person, I have this particular life. I am not particularly anything. You see, I'm not particularly anything. So this base of nothingness, underlying the whole spectrum of perceiving, this is the beauty, in fact. of what you call the liberated mind or the natural mind. We can use the word natural mind.
Natural mind, yes, yes, yes.
That doesn't have to be strict and self-contained.
No. No.
It's more like space, unbound. And this is the I don't want to use the word secret. It's just what is available. This is the opportunity,
yes,
no?
Yes.
This is the opportunity to how to be somehow in this life, because however much the appreciation of the Supreme occurs in the mind and intellect, we cannot dismiss the dynamic world of names and forms and the feeling of existence in this body, because it would not be natural to keep on denying or dismissing, oh, that's not real, almost that sounds like there's some fear. It is what it means by this is that it is seen now, having come home to the true, that the relative and the limited expression of consciousness, they are still pervaded by the Supreme. Everything, the presence is in all of them. It's the mind that creates the sense of division.
Yes.
And good and bad and evil and all of this comes in through this.
Yes.
But from the place of pure seeing, all of this is it. All this life. And including the mind, even in its grosser state, all arises out of this.
Hearing without a hearer, seeing without a seer, perceiving without a perceiver.
That will be the inner confirmation. It is not a teaching that can be learned.
No.
It can only be an intuition or sort of a recognition
Yes.
that behind all these functions there is not sort of like a particular entity
Operating.
and that is probably one of the most profound understanding that will happen.
I think
Because otherwise the ego, the sense of separateness, will always claim victory, always claim, this is one of my attributes, is always claim, I have done this.
I have arrived somewhere.
Yes.
Proclaiming its own
And this is
absence.
the ignorance that seems all pervading. I mean, because sentience gets somehow deluded by this.
Was this clear to you before meeting Papaji, or in?
It was not clear. No,
No,
it was not clear. Prior to meeting Papaji, what happened is here in Brixton, an experience arose. In that experience, it was clear. The first experience was that this feeling of I was very small, and didn't have any power. And that there was a power independent of this feeling of I, the little I, the small self, or whatever you may call it, that was capable of manifesting itself in this body, and its presence was felt as in my language, my conditioning, it was the holiness or the God presence had announced itself. It was there was a sense of myself, a sense of I, and a clear sense that now something really has changed. Now there is a presence here. And it was somehow taking care of me in terms of what I needed to learn, what needed to be cleaned out, that there was not an I in charge.
Yes.
And whenever that feeling of a me would surface, it would be the one that makes the mistake.
Sure.
So what was happening in that period was that there was something may manifest very pleasantly, beautifully, and then the I arose to sort of say, wow, you did really well on this. And whenever that was felt, it immediately, a smell would come out of it. And that smell coming out was very good for me at the time, because it allowed me to see that I had to let go of me. Something I had to let go of this me, which was getting in the way, which I called ego. And I knew that that ego had so much hidden itself inside my being. I wasn't quite sure which is me, which is ego, you see. And it was full of surprise, you know. And so there was a struggle, but always I felt beautifully privileged. I felt it was a very great fortune for me that this presence did not go away. It didn't feel like, oh, it came and it went away.
That experience.
It really felt like it had sort of moved in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like my father had returned or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever the most pure sense of father had returned inside and was cleaning the house. This is how it felt, you know. But there was definitely still a feeling of I. But what was happening is that I had turned its face away from the world, because from aspiring in the world. Those days I was working as an artist, you know, producing paintings and trying to exhibit my work and so on. And suddenly there was a complete shift of my attention, and everything wanted to pour itself into this possibility, into this embrace. I just wanted to drown, to die. I would say, if you require anything of me, the little that I can do, if anything at all, then I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes. If you test me, you know I will fail. I have no power by myself.
Sure.
Your power alone is power.
Yes.
You see, my power is arrogance.
Yes.
And so this was the sort of relationship I had with that feeling. And I feel that speaking to God, I was coming more and more to know that I was not just a person, but that I was sort of consciousness, because I could not separate the sense of I, which is historical and with memory, from this feeling of presence, which had become the new environment of me. You see, there was more. I was more an environment, cocoon in this love and this richness, this warmth, this depth, this unfolding insight and intuitive learning. You know.
Now, the word here that comes is melting. You know, like butter melting.
Yes.
There was a tab of butter.
Yes. Something. The melting was occurring because there was definitely, on my part, so to speak, a surrendering taking place, and it really was unquestioned. You see. When I hear people speak and say, "Oh, I didn't know if that's really my mind playing games," and so I none of these things. I don't see there was a space to have such thoughts, because it was so obviously clear that there wasn't a me doing anything about it. I don't have the trickery.
That's exactly my experience.
So it was totally unquestioned and welcomed, and like this.
That's captures it all.
So that feeling of surrendering, whatever it meant, was the sense of my undoing and being undone somehow. And
this is a good word.
And the feeling.
Undoing is a very good phrase, eh?
Yes, and the feeling that there was more a sort of presence replacing the sort of like the bodily me. The bodily me was being replaced by presence, you see. So that's really started in 1987, and it culminated in 1993. I went to India. And not with anything. I just wanted to go to Sri Ramakrishna's place, because that was one of the books I started
one of the few books.
reading. Yes, because I didn't read books. Even now, I am not so inclined to read books at all. You know? But in those days, definitely, I had not read. It was not an appeal for me. Books, unless they had pictures in them, I was not really drawn to books. But a fascination arose inside to learn quickly as much as I could about what was happening to me. That was also going on, and I came across this book of Sri Ramakrishna, and it became my second Bible in a way. I read it I didn't want to come to the end of it. It was so rich.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity came to go to India, through the grace of my sister, actually, she gave me money to go, and I had not any desire, feeling, intention to meet any guru or nothing like this.
Right.
I felt it was more not just a nostalgic or a sentimental journey to Ramakrishna's place in Calcutta, but it was like a pilgrimage, to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I never got to that place.
Mm-hmm.
I may have said to you before that I encountered some devotees of Papaji,
Mm-hmm.
and through them I came to meet Papaji.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know anything about. I never met any guru or
So this was
anyone
early
like this.
90s, is?
It's 1993.
93, yeah.
Yes, I met Papaji, I think, in November of 93.
Mm.
And then somehow the years before was filled more with bliss, wonder, and some kind of mystical life,
Mm.
which was very much being enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I was enjoying, even that I don't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I was enjoying this before, to be honest. No,
Mm-hmm.
all the context that the reliable context
so
of
away.
life, it was
So
not. I couldn't really depend on anything.
Yes.
All the grounds were shifting. Everything
Yes,
that I felt was
yes.
like so turned out to be not so, and so on. like this.
Yes.
And so when I met Papaji, in a short time, I came to recognize through his teachings and his pointings that he was not pointing somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
He was not pointing above, or
Right.
you see, he was kind of telling you this is your own self, and that message began to open up somehow inside, and it became more and more clear
Yes.
that there was no landing place, there was no special
Location,
place
no
that could
location.
be found, and so this changed, this addition to the feeling of great bliss and joy became emptiness. Emptiness was becoming something more pronounced. And I cannot say the emptiness is different from the love or the bliss somehow, but in that moment it was felt to be different. Kind of felt like it was without content. But in the feeling and the recognition of that emptiness, there was something that you would not imagine emptiness would contain. I still can't find a word for it.
No words.
There was something that emptiness contained something that is not what you would think if you just heard the word. It's not just space.
Sure.
It is something. Maybe it is love.